Take a moment before you continue. Not because something urgent is chasing you, but because nothing needs to be forced right now. If these words reached you, it's not because you were looking for answers, it's because you were ready to stop running from yourself. There comes a point in life where the noise outside becomes louder than the truth inside, where opinions pile up, expectations multiply, and suddenly you forget what your voice sounds like. You didn't lose it, you just learned to ignore it to survive. For a long time, you adapted. You learned when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to compromise and when to let things slide. You became good at adjusting. That skill kept you safe once, but now it's keeping you small. Something in you knows that the old way of living no longer fits, not because it was wrong, but because you've outgrown it. Growth rarely announces itself. It shows up as discomfort, as restlessness, as a quiet feeling that says, there has to be more than this. And that feeling isn't ungrateful. It's honest. You're not dissatisfied with life. You're dissatisfied with living disconnected from yourself. Lately, you may have noticed that you don't react the same way anymore. Things that once pulled emotional responses from you now feel distant, not numb, just clearer. This isn't withdrawal, it's awareness. You're beginning to recognize what deserves your energy and what doesn't. You're realizing that peace isn't found in fixing everything, it's found in choosing what to carry. And you don't want to carry everything anymore. You've spent enough time being strong for everyone else, enough time explaining yourself, enough time shrinking your needs so situations could stay comfortable. That phase taught you resilience. This phase is teaching you boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. They let the right things in and keep the unnecessary weight out. You're learning that not every connection is meant to last forever. Some were meant to teach, some were meant to prepare, some were meant to show you what you no longer want. Letting go doesn't erase the value of what once existed. It simply honors the truth of who you're becoming. And who you're becoming values clarity over chaos, stability over intensity, depth over noise. You no longer feel drawn to urgency. You're drawn to alignment. Alignment feels calm, even when it leads into uncertainty. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't threaten you. It invites you forward. You may still have moments of doubt. That's human. But doubt no longer controls your decisions. Instead of asking, what if this fails, you're starting to ask, does this feel true to me? That question changes everything. Because when you honor what feels true, life begins to meet you with less resistance. You stop forcing timing. You stop chasing validation. You stop needing guarantees before taking the next step. And surprisingly, things begin to unfold anyway. Not faster, but smoother. You begin to notice that your inner world feels steadier. Your thoughts feel less scattered. Your emotions feel easier to regulate. That's not coincidence. That's integration. You're integrating lessons you once learned through pain. You're no longer repeating cycles just to prove you've healed. You're choosing differently because you've grown. Growth doesn't demand applause. It simply shows up in how you move. You pause before responding. You listen more than you speak. You trust yourself enough to walk away without drama. And slowly, you build a life that feels sustainable. Not exciting all the time, not perfect, but grounded. This season isn't asking you to become someone new. It's asking you to come back to yourself. To stop living from pressure. To stop making decisions out of fear of missing out. To stop carrying expectations that were never yours. You don't need to rush this process. Nothing meaningful is asking you to hurry. What's meant for you will arrive when you're ready to receive it, not when you're exhausted from chasing it. So let things unfold naturally. Let clarity keep emerging. Let patience replace pressure. Let trust guide your steps. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not failing. You're recalibrating. And this recalibration will shape a future that feels calmer, stronger, and more aligned than anything you've known before. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Just keep choosing honesty. Keep choosing peace. Keep choosing yourself. That's how the next chapter begins. Quietly, clearly, and without force.
Pause for a moment before you continue.
not because something urgent is about to happen, but because this moment deserves your full presence. If these words reached you, it's not by chance, not because you were searching for guidance, but because something inside you was ready to slow down and listen. There are phases in life where everything appears fine from the outside, yet internally you feel a quiet shift taking place. Not chaos, not confusion, just a sense that the old way of living no longer fits the person you're becoming, and that feeling can be unsettling. You may have tried to ignore it, stayed busy, distracted yourself, told yourself to be grateful and move on, but growth doesn't disappear when ignored. It waits. For a long time, you learned how to survive by adapting. You adjusted your expectations. You carried more than your share. You stayed longer than you should have, not because it felt right, but because it felt familiar. That version of you did what it needed to do. It kept you going. It kept you safe. But this season is asking for something different. It's asking you to live with intention instead of endurance, to respond instead of react, to choose peace without explaining yourself. You're beginning to notice that your tolerance for chaos has decreased, that certain conversations feel draining instead of stimulating, that environments you once accepted now feel heavy. This isn't weakness, it's awareness. Awareness shows you where you no longer belong. And instead of fighting that realization, you're slowly learning to respect it. You don't feel the need to convince anyone anymore. You don't feel guilty for needing space. You don't feel pressured to stay where your spirit feels constrained. That's not distance, that's alignment. Alignment doesn't rush you. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand constant effort. It feels steady, quiet, grounded. You're learning that clarity doesn't come from overthinking. It comes from listening. Listening to your body when it tightens. Listening to your intuition when something feels off. Listening to yourself when you're calm enough to hear the truth. And the truth is simple. You don't need to prove your growth. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to explain why certain paths no longer appeal to you. What's meant to stay will stay without force. What's meant to leave will do so quietly. You're not losing anything essential. You are refining. Refinement removes what no longer fits so what truly belongs can remain. This phase of your life isn't about speed, it's about stability. Not building something impressive for others to see, but building something sustainable for yourself to live in. You may still face uncertainty, that's part of being human, but uncertainty no longer defines your choices. Instead of asking, what if this goes wrong, you now ask, does this align with who I am becoming? That question is guiding you well. You are no longer chasing outcomes, you are creating conditions. Conditions for peace, for clarity, for a life that doesn't require constant recovery. And slowly, you'll notice how much lighter things feel. Not because problems vanish, but because you're no longer carrying unnecessary weight. This season isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it doesn't need validation. It's quiet growth, real growth, the kind that shows up in how you speak, how you choose, how you rest. You're not falling behind, you're arriving calmly, honestly, and in your own time. And from this point forward, you don't have to abandon yourself to move ahead. You get to walk forward whole. This chapter doesn't end in urgency, it ends in understanding. And that understanding will carry you exactly where you need to be.